goes.
Okay, we're live, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Senate Agriculture. It looks like Senator Cost is out there. If we can drag him in here, that'd be great. Jeremiah, you think you can help out there? Get Mr. Costin. We'll go ahead and get going here. Welcome, like I said, to Senate Agriculture. Got a very jam-packed agenda, so we'll go ahead and get started with a roll call vote.
Senator Bouchard.
Here.
Senator French.
Here.
Senator Cost.
Here.
Senator Wasserberger.
Excused.
Chairman Boner.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have 4 present, 1 excused.
Okay, I'm sure Senator Wasserberger will be joining us shortly. So the first bill we have, well, first of all, for your rules, got some new folks here. Welcome. Good to see some constituents from Platte County. Glad y'all made it. Hopefully we'll get to dinner here sometime tonight. But just a reminder to address the chair. Keep it civil, keep it focused on the facts at hand, the bill at hand, and I have every confidence that we'll have a good, respectful, meaningful discussion here on all these bills. So that being said, the first Senate file we have before us is Senate File 86. This is wildfires one call exemption. And I guess I'll go ahead and go over the bill briefly. And we have Representative Haraldson here as well, who will be taking the lead in the House. So feel free to come up and provide your be ready to provide your testimony here, Representative. And feel free to clean up anything that I may have missed in the explanation of this bill. But committee, basically, the idea here is that we have a chilling effect that's making it a challenge for our local, especially our rural fire departments, to do their work. It mostly has to do with liability under the current one-call statutes, as well as the lack of practical use of having some of the requirements that we have in statute for individuals suppressing wildland fires in this state. So right now, there is a requirement that anybody constructing a fire break, pulling a line, wherever it may be, to do that one call. And I think I'm not a volunteer firefighter, but we have several here who are, who can provide more information as to why that's not practical, why that's not useful in these situations. So we'll hear that testimony. But the biggest challenge is that if you don't make that call, you might be liable for the damages that you cause, which has a chilling effect when you need, especially a private contractor to assist in doing that work. It's the current exemptions in statute make it a challenge to get even county road graders to get off the county road sometimes and help out. We're just basically having this bill. It's a very simple bill, adding an additional exemption in that new paragraph K that will go ahead and make sure that we bring the law up to the current practice within the state and make sure that we remove this chilling effect that's making it a challenge for our wildland firefighters to find the help that they need. So that's the premise of the bill. Simple little bill in writing. Obviously, there's 80 or so entities that rely on our one-call statutes to protect our underground infrastructure, so maybe a little bit more complicated in practice, though I'd like to think that this is a common sense bill that allows our firefighters to do their job and just, like I said, get these statutes into a place where it reflects the current reality on the ground. So that being said, Representative Haraldson, feel free to provide any testimony you like and fill any gaps I may have missed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and committee. So where we're at right now is current statute or current law requires that any time that ground is broken on a wildland fire, that one call of Wyoming is contacted. And so no one was aware of this. This came to the surface that this was a need. And one call's like, oh yeah, you're supposed to do that. So I'm just gonna give you a scenario. It's 2 a.m., you're on the backside of a mountain and you need to make a one call for 4 lines you're dragging. And they're gonna answer the phone and say, one call of Wyoming, where are you going to be doing the excavation? And you're at 2 in the morning in the middle of a forest fire and you're like, I don't even know what mountain I'm on right now. And so you're supposed to tell them and you're supposed to give them an address. Well, you can't give them an address because you don't have an address. So then they're going to ask for the 2 roads that intersect closest to you. Well, we don't even know. And then on top of it, if one call actually sends someone, that would be a catastrophe because you definitely don't want them up there trying to locate a line in the middle of a forest fire. So obviously it's kind of absurd and ludicrous that we would say this. So currently, no calls are being made, and currently this isn't an issue. Besides the fact is, as Senator Boner says, Chairman Boner said, is we now sit at a point of liability. where a private entity or a private company could be liable. And so we are looking for this exemption. So before you, this is simply bringing the statute to what is current practice. No practice is going to change here. Currently, we don't make a one call. Our wildland firefighters don't make a one call. And this would keep it where they do not have to make a one call. Now that it's been found out, they would have to make a one call for every single time a hand line's brought in, a grader line, a dozer line, any of those nature. And so this is just, I think it's a very common sense bill that brings that exemption that is currently being exercised, but not currently on the books. So with that, I stand for any questions.
Okay, questions for either of us, committee? Okay, thank you very much, Representative. We have our state forester here. Mr. Crapser, feel free to come up and provide your perspective. And just so the way it usually goes, we'll bring any state agencies, then we'll have local elected officials if they want, then we'll have we have some folks with good experience, our fire warden in Platte County, for example, that can provide some testimony as well. So go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good evening. My name is Bill Crapser. I'm the state forester. I've been state forester in the state for 19 years. That I know of, I am not aware of any time any underground utility has been damaged by fire line activity. However, we have about 1,000 fires, non-federal fires a year in the state, miles and miles of grader line, hand line, all sorts of line. And as Representative Harrelson said, it would be, to be in all honesty, I didn't realize this was even an issue until Platte County Fire Warden called me last summer and said, do we have to call one call? Nah, we must have an exemption from this, and then found out we didn't. The example I'll use is our state helitack. If our state helitack is launched on a fire on a private ranch, according to the statute, they're scratching the surface with hand tools and would have to call one call before they could put fire line around a 1/10 of an acre fire around a single tree lightning snag. That's, to me, a little bit silly. Nobody has been calling one call, and I would support the bill from that standpoint. I'd answer any questions that you'd have.
Any questions to the state forester? Hey, thank you, sir. Appreciate your perspective. Okay, any additional public comment? Oh, we got the County Commissioners Association. That's why y'all pay them the big bucks. Come down here and talk, right?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Jeremiah Riemann here on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. We do support the bill and appreciate your consideration. I'm not going to add much context to it beyond what you've already heard. I would suggest one perhaps possible change to it. The bill is effective July 1st of 2022 in the bill, and perhaps that's more appropriate to be effective immediately, because I suspect we may have fires before then. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd stand for questions.
Any questions for Mr. Ryman? Okay, thank you, sir. Any further public comment? Hey, come on down, sir.
Jason Hendricks. I'm with Range. We're a broadband company. We have fiber all throughout the state. We provide broadband services. We provide connections to cell towers. Little bit of concern with the bill, just because we do have communication facilities out there. As an example, if there's some digging to be done as part of this work that we're talking about this evening, that causes a cut in the communication line, and that leads to people who need to be evacuated not getting the message that they need to be evacuated. That's a concern. And so, like I said, we provide the connections to cell towers. We don't actually provide cell phone service. Well, I've been working on one call issues for a long time. Had a number of amendments on the stuff, and I can say that when these issues come up, typically the one call board and a lot of the operators get together, see if there's a way to come up with some kind of language that works for everyone. In this case, I certainly understand the concern. I understand the position of the emergency and trying to address those concerns. But it seems to me that there could be a way to perhaps come up with some kind of language that kind of protects people, because I know that I don't represent gas lines. I don't know if anyone here does, but there's a danger to the firefighters if you dig into a gas line. For us, we don't blow up, but like I said, we do have communication lines that are important. So one option for consideration is call as soon as practicable. So if it's a real emergency, you can't get out there, and call before you get out there. But you have a break at a certain point in time, you're able to make a call. Maybe you can at least find out that, there are facilities nearby, so just be careful. Maybe you got lucky the first time and didn't hit them, but be careful because they are nearby. I think that with GPS capability, I think that you can call in and report GPS. I don't think it has to just be street address or road connections. I don't know if One Call is here. They would be able to answer that a little bit better, but I think GPS is an option. And then another option to consider is if there's some kind of a depth exemption. So rather than just a broad exemption, if something could be put in where, as long as you're not digging, say, greater than 6 inches or 12 inches, I think that would probably make sure that I think everyone who puts in lines buries them below 12 inches for the most part. But when we worked on this a couple years ago, there was a road grade exemption, and that was put in at 4 inches, which is, for road grading, that seemed to make sense. And we do have a lot of facilities near roads, so we had to be careful. So we kept that one pretty shallow. So 12 inches seems like it would be okay. And then, like I said, just call as soon as practicable. If you could put some kind of guardrails around the exemption rather than just having it be completely wide open, that would certainly make us feel more comfortable. And I think it helps for the safety and well-being of everyone. So that's all I have, but I'd stand for any questions.
Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, I really do understand where you're coming from, because I do my best to do the call before you dig, because I don't want to get lit up, as you can tell. It'd be rough. But, how would you handle a situation like down in Colorado a couple of weeks, 3 weeks ago or whatever, south of, it was relatives of mine, that fire that started and raced across, I think burned 1,000 homes in short order and miles and miles and miles. I mean, they didn't have an opportunity to call when it's practicable.
Mr. Chairman, Senator French, yeah, I understand. I recognize the need that somebody needs to get out there, but I think that at a certain point, when you have enough people congregating onto an area, now the example that I think that we're talking about is mostly forest fires are away from residential areas. But if you're talking about putting out home fires, well, that's kind of a different situation. I mean, you just know that there are going to be lines there. There are going to be all kinds of lines going to a house. But if you're out in the middle of somewhere and it's an emergency call and you need to get out there and do something right away to control it, I'm not a firefighter. I don't know what all goes on with that. But if you need to control it right away, and then, like I said, if there's a break or it shifts or moves, I would think that with the communication systems that we have today, that somebody could at least make a call to let somebody know. It doesn't take too long.
Any further questions, committee? Oh, Senator Cost.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the mountains, a lot of times you don't have cell service. So what's the best solution to that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Cost, again, I don't know the operational details, but I assume that there's a base operation. So you're on some kind of a walkie-talkie. You can talk back to base. Hey, somebody call into 811, let them know that we're in such and such P&H coordinates. is there anything nearby that we need to be aware of?
Okay, you good? Yeah, well, just real quick before we go back, I do appreciate you coming to the table with suggestions. That's more than I got from the one call folks. For the record, I did reach out to them hoping to find, some suggestions, and the answer is just flat no, we are not going to work with you. So I think that's important that the public understands that, and that's why we have the bill in the shape that it's in. First of all, and second of all, I just, we heard the testimony from the state forester of the hundreds of miles of these lines that get constructed every fire season. Have you had any problems at all with, with the fact that nobody's called at all? Have you ever had any damage to your infrastructure due to these activities?
Due to the activities, not that I know of. I mean, we've had our facilities burned before. We've had just last year up in southeast Montana, fire came through, and our stuff above the ground, we have PEDs where the fiber comes in, it comes up above ground. We had that stuff burned, but I don't know if anyone has dug in the past. So.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions, committee? Thank you for your testimony, I appreciate
Thank you.
it. Any further public testimony? And I'm not sure if I mentioned this, so just make sure you state your name for the record,
Okay.
who you're representing, and then proceed with your testimony, sir.
Senators, my name's Aaron Clark. I'm the Platte County, Wyoming Fire Warden. I've had the job for 3 years. I've been fighting fire for a lot longer than that. Before I talk about this bill in general, I'd like to address some of the things that I just heard from the utility. Mr. Crapser and I were trying to figure out how many fires we've had in Wyoming. What's our normal? Our normal year on private land and state land is about 1,000 fires. Federal fires, probably about the same. So statewide, maybe 2,000 fires a year, which just seems like a lot of fires. It is a lot of fires. Those all occur during 4 months, most of them. Although it's starting to change, we're starting to get a lot more winter fires up where we are. But all that fire activities in basically July, August, September, and October. That's our active season. We run our tails off. We barely have time to get home before we go to the next fire. I understand the need to protect buried utilities. I fully agree with doing that. I don't think the utility companies, though, are the best judge of what it takes to keep our firefighters safe. We do that. We're trained. We train with the REA almost every year. We know how to deal with fires on their poles. We know not to spray the lines. They work with us. As a matter of fact, most of the REA linemen are members of our volunteer fire departments. We very seldom go to a fire anymore when we're not dragging along an REA truck because we have overhead lines that we now have to deal with. A lot of our fires are very rural in the mountains. And the idea that you put a limit on how deep we can dig before calling one call is just ludicrous. We have to dig out every stump that's on fire. And I wish we could take people out on a fire so they could see this. It's dirty, it's disgusting work. That's what's nice about being warden. I don't have to do that anymore, okay? I'm basically there as eye candy. The rest of these guys have to do the work. So we dig 2 feet down through a stump to put it out. I don't know if you've ever been on a fire, but you spray water on a stump, you know what you're gonna do? You're gonna come back the next day. You're gonna come back the next day. You're gonna come back the next day. We dig down, we dig those out. Duff. Everybody know what duff is? Pine needles. That stuff can get waist deep in some of these forests. If you get a fire that's smoldering through duff, it will go for a month. And you know what? You're coming back again. So we cut that stuff out. We cut a line through it, or we burn it out. That's what we do. We are now at a place where we have a lot of urban interface in Platte County. And it's not just us, it's everywhere across the state. People have moved in. They're buying ranches up, they're building multi-million-dollar homes. They're subdividing ranches. We got 35-acre ranchettes all over everywhere. Some of those people are on the grid, some of those people are off the grid. The bottom line is now every fire we go to, we have to worry about houses. That's our number one priority anymore. Structures. Well, I'll take that back. My number one priority is keep my firefighters safe. That's it. Number two is keeping people's homes intact. But then we also worry about livestock. We worry about grazing. These guys, you know, if you lose all your winter grass, that's a pretty bad thing. And then you're off to your neighbors trying to bum grass off of them. So we have all of those pressures now that we're under. So what we do is we throw everything we got at a fire. If that includes blades, dozers, whatever it may be, we throw it at it because we know what it's like to lose one. We will get a $7 million fire in Platte County and people will lose their homes. That's what we cannot have happen anymore in Platte County. So what I would say is that it sounds real easy to take 15 minutes and call one call when you get a break. Those breaks never seem to come. I wish they did, but we're up all night. We don't sleep. We've got aircraft in the air. We're ordering resources from Casper Dispatch. We're asking other counties to come help us. We're worried about our firefighters staying safe. We know where the utilities are in Platte County. We know where they are. Everybody knows where they are. We know that phone line that goes down Fletcher Park Road, that's half above the ground, is going to be that way because it's been that way for 40 years. We know down Palmer Canyon Road where the phone companies hung their phone line in the barbed wire fences because they can't keep it buried. So if you're really worried about safety for my firefighters, if that's what you're really worried about, then what you need to be doing is burying your utilities where we don't get to them. When we're trying to protect homes, where we're trying to save lives, we're trying to save people's grass. I'm here today because there's a one-line statement in One Call of Wyoming's excavator manual. They give this out to every excavator. It's on the website. And I want to just read this to you, but I'm going to replace the word excavator with fire department because that's what we are under the statute. We are an excavator. It says in their manual, even in an emergency, fire departments are responsible for damages to facilities when excavating prior to facilities being marked by facility operators. Let me explain that. So if we call one call and we wait for 6 hours for somebody to show up and they mark that line that's out there, and then if we hit it, we're not liable. If we go and put that line in, because we can't wait 6 hours, and I've never been able to wait 6 hours. We're lucky to have a couple of minutes to save somebody's house. Now I'm liable. That's what this bill did when it was written, this law. It shifted the liability for shallow utilities away from the utility companies onto us, emergency responders. And it's just not fair. And I don't think that's what you want. I think you want our guys to go out there and throw everything you got at these fires, Katie bar the door, and boy, you want to see cowboys? Come out with a bunch of firefighters. We'll cowboy this thing up and we're going to put it out. But it ain't going to be pretty. And you know, there's a chance, yeah, if there's a line out there that's 3 inches deep or it's above the ground, like a certain utility's phone lines, it's going to get snagged. It's probably going to get snagged by the next cow that walks through too. So I don't understand why everybody thinks we have all this time and this ability to involve everybody and their dog in our firefighting activity. I don't want them there. I don't need them there. They're in my way. I've got to worry about getting the public out of there. Now I got somebody out there that doesn't even know what to do with the fire. So I'm going to shut up. I'll just go for days here.
Well, thank you for your testimony and that you're adding the expert perspective there. Any questions, committee? Okay, thank you very much, sir. Any further public testimony? Come on down.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Shad Cooper. I'm the County Fire Warden and Fire Chief for Sublette County Unified Fire. I'm also the president of the Wyoming Fire Advisory Board for the Rural Firefighters Association. We've discussed this and support the bill as written. It's hard to follow Aaron's testimony. One additional point I would make is it would be very difficult for us to GPS a fire because of the dynamic nature of the fire. You know, wind and topography and fuels influence the direction and rate of spread of a fire. And if I was to provide a GPS, it might have been 10 minutes ago, but now it's going a completely different direction. And I do not see a way for us to accurately anticipate with enough value and information to give that to one call that would make a difference. We've been on many fires in Sublette County where we're protecting homes and putting, graders down or dozers down or even hand line down with shovels. And it absolutely makes a difference. And we certainly wouldn't have the ability to, make a phone call and wait for a response. And then even if somebody from one call did come and try to provide a locate, I wouldn't really want them on the fire line because they would be at risk. And without training and proper PPE, it would be very difficult to find a way to have them help us to find a solution at the same time with all the chaos that County Fire Warden Clark had provided. So the Wyoming Fire Advisory Board supports this bill as written, and thank you very much for your consideration and support.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cooper. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further public testimony? Okay, we have anybody online for this bill? Nope. Okay, anybody else in the room? Going once, going twice. Public testimony is closed. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Senator Cost, seconded by Senator French. Entertain any amendments or discussion on the bill. It's a nice little 3-liner. Oh, Senator French, you have an amendment?
Yes.
Put your mic on.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would offer the amendment on page 2, section 2, line 2, that this act is effective immediately.
Okay, any discussion on that amendment? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Oh, sorry. Senator Wasberger, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, just on that, that is the standard for a bill. Usually it goes into effect July 1, as do all our bills. And unless this is an emergency, which maybe that's what we're saying that is, we usually don't change it to immediate.
Senator Bouchard.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We could put that additional language that says everything that's had, the hoops that we jump through for constitutionality, and that would just make sure everything's done. And we've done what had to be completed with the steps that had to be done to get this in place without rushing it immediately. If that makes anyone feel better.
Right, yeah, I think the way I understood the motion, it'd be the standard language that we always use when we make a bill effective immediately, and don't have to recite, because I haven't memorized it. I've been doing this job for 7 years, so yeah.
That's what we're talking about, right?
Yes.
So yeah, it should be fine. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
That motion carries. We're back on the bill. Any further discussion? Okay, well, let's go and call the roll.
Senator Bouchard,
Aye.
Senator French,
Aye.
Senator Cost,
Aye.
Senator Wasserberger,
Aye.
Chairman Boner.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 5 ayes, do pass amended.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for your participation. We'll move this on to the Senate floor as soon as we can. So, good to see you. Okay, next up, we have Senate File 81. I believe Senator Hicks was out there in the hallway if somebody could grab him. His bill is up. Welcome back to Senate Ag, Senator. Okay, go ahead and proceed with your testimony whenever you're ready.
Mr. Chairman, this is probably as good a short little bill as you're going to see the entire session and maybe your whole career here. Mr. Chairman, I just want to first walk you through the memo that our LSO drafted up. Did an outstanding job on this. Originally,
This come through, was sitting through one of our select water committee meetings with one of my House colleagues, and they said, how come we don't call out groundwater in the Constitution as owners of the state? And I said, well, I don't know the answer to that question. And so that spurred the discussion as, well, do we need a constitutional amendment to actually claim groundwater? So, Mr. Chairman, if you'll go to page 2 of the amendment, it highlights the discussion that we have under the Constitution. So while the state currently regulates groundwater through a prior appropriation system, the precise question of whether the state owns the underground water in the state of Wyoming has never been explicitly answered by the Supreme Court. This question is important for any constitutional analysis. And then if you go on down a little further, it says, based on the plain language in the Constitution and the nature of prior appropriation, the state likely owns groundwater. That reference in the Constitution is found in Article 8, Section 3, and this deals with the prior appropriation of water, and we are a prior appropriation state based on beneficial use. But that's the constitutional provision that talks about prior appropriation, Mr. Chairman. But if you go on through that, we also have Article 8, Section 1, and this is the focus of the memo primarily. It says the water of all natural streams, springs, lakes, or other collections of still water within the boundaries of the state are hereby declared to be the property of the state. If you go through the memo and the analysis, it also doesn't call out surface water from groundwater. And there has been a series of court cases in the state of New Mexico that dealt with this very issue based on their constitutional provision and their prior appropriation state. So a similar question has arisen, and it did go to the New Mexico Supreme Court. And their Supreme Court ruled that even though it didn't specifically call out groundwater, they ruled it is, but there was still that question of, do we own that? So, Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to take you to the last page of the memo. I'm not going to go through all the analysis of this. You've got that for you. But I think the most important thing is to go to page 7 and go down to the very bottom and the last sentence. And it says, with the Wyoming Constitution not specifying surface or groundwater, but simply all water, providing statutory clarification may simply serve as the legislature affirmatively declaring the existing law of the land rather than waiting for litigation to arise, whether through an inter or an intra-state water dispute. So based on that, it's not explicitly clear. We think it was likely to stand up to any court challenges, but we have the ability through statute just to make an affirmative declaration as to what the Constitution does. And Mr. Chairman, that's all the bill does. Is if you go over to page 2, under the groundwater section, it just brings in, it says subsection A, pursuant to Article 8, Section 1 of the Wyoming Constitution, underground water within the boundaries of the state is property of the state. Mr. Chairman, that's the bill.
Any questions?
Stand for your questions.
Any questions, committee? Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Aaron Wasberg.
I would just say, I always thought we owned the groundwater.
Mr. Chairman, so did I, because we regulate it. We can go back to the constitutional provision under Article 1, Section 33, where the control of the water is under the state's control. But again, I'm like you. This is why we went through this endeavor to look. And again, the courts have never ruled. And so this just makes a declaration that when it says back in our Constitution, it says, all water of natural streams, springs, lakes, or other collections of still water within the boundaries of the state are hereby declared to be the property of the state. So there's a whole, you can go through the whole memo and say, well, we can claim it other ways to make that argument. We're just saying in this bill, it is the property through legislative declaration pursuant to our Constitution. So I was under the same assumption as you, and I think that would be the position of the state, but this just provides a positive affirmation that it means what it says, and we mean what it says, that it is the property. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would answer any more questions.
Any further questions, committee? Hey, thank you, Senator Hicks. Yeah, Mr. Gephardt here, you got anything? Sir? That's all? Okay, a pretty simple bill. Any public comment on Senate File 81? Okay,
I move the bill, Mr. Chairman.
okay, yeah, it looks like we, okay, public comment is closed, the bill has been moved. Any discussion, committee? No? Okay, we'll go ahead and do a roll call.
Senator Bouchard,
Aye.
Senator French,
Aye.
Senator Cost,
Aye.
Senator Wasserberger,
Aye.
Chairman Bonner.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 5 ayes, do pass.
All right, thank you, Mr. Senator Hicks. Final bill for our consideration, Senate File 97. Senator Beitman, feel free to come on down. Explain this Senate file.
Thank you, committee. Senator Beitman, Senate District 21, Sheridan County. I present to you Senate File 97, an old friend, change in party affiliation. Once again, committee, this bill, we've been taking a stab at this since I've been elected in 2016. So it's been a long road, but hopefully this is the year we finally drag this carcass across the finish line. I will present you the bill. It's a short bill. The meat of the bill is on page 2. We go into 22.5.214, change in party affiliation. The current statute's one sentence long. What we're doing is going in there and adding some language. You'll see a new subsection A, for a primary election, an elector may declare or change party affiliation by completing an application signed before a notary or election official and filing it with the county clerk not later than the first day on which an application for nomination may be filed under statute 22.5.209. And then some technical language in subsection B, for a general election, an elector may declare or change. This was worked out with the county clerks, I believe, in the Secretary of State's office, and hopefully they'll be able to talk more about those changes. The rest of the bill is conforming language, except for the, on page 1, that first section, 22.3.115. What that does, that grounds for cancellation of registration. In current law, there's 6 different reasons you can have to cancel your registration. And number 6 here, it shows in this bill, upon written request of the elector. What we're doing here is adding the language at any time except for when the period is where we're stopping the party switching from nominating period till the day of the primary election. So it's just to prevent people from gaming the system. This would have been a loophole. You could have canceled your registration and then re-registered on the day of to get around this. So that's why that's in there, in case you're wondering. And other than that, that's the bill, Mr. Chairman. I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions, committee? Senator Cost.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Beitman, you and I had talked about what happens when somebody moves in after the cutoff. Are they just not able to register then? Have you found any more out on that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Costa, yeah, they can still vote and their registration can go to their new address. They just can't switch party affiliation if it's within that period. Otherwise, if it was between the day after the primary election all the way through the whole next year up until the next filing period starts, they can change at any time. So if that answers your question.
If they were from another state or whatever, and hadn't been declared, say they're brand new to declare, or they've turned 18 after the election date, are they eligible to go ahead and apply?
Mr. Chairman, yes, and that would be a new registration. So that this doesn't prevent new registrations. It just prevents switching of your registration or your party affiliation or dropping your registration to get around this law if it were to pass.
And just a quick follow-up on that. So new registration means not just somebody who just turned 18, but maybe somebody who moved from out of state that also qualifies as a new registration.
Correct, Mr. Chairman, or somebody that's never registered to vote ever.
Right,
You know,
okay.
they just show up and they want to register.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. Any further questions? Senator Wasberger.
So just a quick question for the sponsor. What is the exact date of that a person would be required to register or change party affiliation?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Senator Wasserberger, statute 225209, that's currently in law right now is titled Time for Filing Nomination Applications Certified List. It reads, an application for nomination shall be filed not more than 96 days and not later than 81 days next preceding the primary election. So there's going to be a window between 96 and 81 days out under current law. So this would start the day, probably the 97th day, right? The day before filing period.
Yeah, and so you would have, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, but you would have till the 81st day. But
Correct. Yeah, sorry. Correct.
But at that point in time, you wouldn't know who was running.
Mr. Chairman, correct. That's the point. It's a lot of the party switching and what we're seeing with this practice of I'll use the example of Democrats switching over to Republican because I'm a Republican. They'll wait to see who files, and if they want to get engaged in the other party's primary and basically pick their competitor, they can go in and switch their parties at that point in time to go in and vote in another party's primary election. That's the exact practice I'm trying to stop with this legislation. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's the right thing to do, and I think it's time we change that.
Okay, and just to follow up on it, so to be clear, it's the first day of the filing period. That's when the cutoff begins, right?
Correct.
Okay. Any further questions for the sponsor committee? Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Senator. So we have folks from the Secretary of State's office, if they'd like to come on down.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Kai Schoen, Election Director in the Secretary of State's office. Senate File 97, change in party affiliation. Our office did work closely with Senator Beitman on the language, as well as worked with the county clerks. As it's written, it can be implemented. There is a small one-time fiscal impact on this bill, as we've spoken of in years past on bills like this, to make changes to our statewide voter registration system, as well as our state electronic poll book. The total estimated amount for that fiscal impact is $12,540. And we'd be utilizing those funds come 2023 to make those modifications, because during an election year, all of our election systems the code is frozen, if you will. We don't touch it to mess around with that. But in the off year in 2023, we can make those modifications, which would then prevent the end user from changing a party affiliation on a voter record, both in the county's office or at the polls on election day. And so technology mirroring what the statute says is what that money gets at. And with that, I don't have anything further to mention. The good senator brought up all the good points, but I'd be happy to answer any other questions members of the committee might have.
Any questions? Yeah, well, I have one, since this is effective immediately for the 2022 election. So would it be safe to assume that we'd be completely relying on the county clerks administering the election to make sure that they comply with the law? Then afterwards, we'd have to come in and make sure the software, I guess, verifies those procedures. Is that a correct assumption?
Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely right.
And it could be therefore stipulated that, or in any way that necessarily have to change the software, that we continue to rely on the county clerks to continue to follow these procedures, or is there something wrong, or is that just unnecessary risk for the $12,000 price tag, I guess?
Mr. Chairman, good question, fair question. And true that if there was no changes made, that it certainly would fall down to the end users, which would be the number of workers that work in the county clerk's office, but then you multiply that by, tenfold or so come election day. So it's really to prevent, being in violation of the statute, so.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, committee? Okay, thank you for your expertise and your input. Okay, do we have any county clerks? Oh, we have Senator Salazar. Usually we do legislators first. Sorry, I didn't see you there. If we have any county clerks also would be wanting to hear from you, then we'll get to general public comment, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very briefly, this is policy decision. I will simply tell you that last year in my Senate District 26, I talked to my constituents in DuBois, Pavilion, Riverton, Jeffrey City, everyone, at least in my Senate district, it may be different in yours, but those that I've talked to in my district overwhelmingly support this. And again, I come before you simply as one senator in one Senate district. I will tell you that the vast majority of the Republican Party in Fremont County support this. But again, it's just one county, and it's my anecdotal information. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Any questions for our colleague? Okay, thank you. Any county clerks in the audience? Oh, there, yes. Please come on down.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Senators. I'm Mary Lankford, and I have the honor of representing the county clerks. Today at the table with me, I have the Honorable Julie Freese, Fremont County Clerk. Our purpose here today is to focus on the administration of Wyoming elections, and particularly on party change affiliation. The clerks have had the opportunity to review this proposed legislation and are comfortable that we can administer it. However, we have a couple of questions and we have a couple of concerns. One concern, I'm sorry, we would like to have you look at page 3 on line 2. It talks about when this is effective. So it says the elector, for a primary election, an elector may declare or change party affiliation by completing an application signed before a notary officer or election official and filing it with the county clerk not later than the first day on which an application for nomination may be filed. We would like consideration of possibly just a clarification there where it says not later than, say prior to. To make that a little clearer for us, as opposed to, is it the day before, is it the day of, prior to, okay? And our concerns, we have several. One being that this is going to require a lot of education on the part of probably the Secretary of State's office, the county clerks, and that type of thing, because it will be a change in the manner that we do election now, or not election now, but the fact that we have voters out there, particularly our nonpartisan voters, who don't declare a ballot or declare a party until they come to vote, till they see who the candidates are. And I can't say right off the top of my head how many nonpartisan voters there are in the state of Wyoming, but it's considerable. They don't declare a party until they're ready to vote. We're concerned about whether they're going to get disenfranchised or not. Another one is that we have a situation that will come up, and it's always in the primary, where someone comes in, they get started voting on their ballot, and they realize that, geez, they really wanted to vote for the sheriff, and he's on the other side of the ballot. He's on a different party. So it's like, oh, I don't want to vote this ballot. I want to change my party and vote for my friend, the sheriff, that's running for the sheriff. So those oopses happen, and we don't really know how we would deal with that in a situation like this because you're not allowed to change your party until after the day of the primary. So that person would not be allowed to vote either. We're concerned about people being able to vote, and those are the reason why we bring up those concerns. And then after just hearing, I think we want to speak to, after hearing on section 2, the effective date of this, as Director Schoen explained to you, all of that programming and work has already been done and is sealed for the 22 election. It wouldn't be for till 23. And we question how, if that's that monitoring and if that date is appropriate, maybe it should be later on, or are the counties going to then be responsible for that monitoring and that type of work ahead of that for this coming election? So, and with that, the County Clerks Association is really taking a position of no position on this particular bill. As we said, we can administer the bill the way it's written with possibly that one small suggested amendment to clarify when the actual day is that the last day that you can file before the primary starts in that season. And we're ready to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you for your testimony and your input. Any questions for the clerks? Okay, absolutely. Well, thanks. Appreciate
you.
your input once again. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, we'll open up to general public comment, just so we can consider whether we need to manage our time. If you're interested in testifying, would you please raise your hand? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we got 2 online, so that's pretty manageable. So feel free to come on up. We won't do any time restrictions or anything like that. Just ask you to stick to the point. So come on down. Ms. Simmons, you're up first.
Gail Simmons from Sheridan County, speaking as Civics 307. First of all, Mr. Chair, I'll answer the question on unaffiliated. There are 35,344 registered unaffiliated voters as of the 1st of February, 2022. So on this bill, what I'd first like to do is just kind of go over kind of what I saw as the background on this. So I looked at the sponsor's press release and saw that he was defining that the issue is changing their party affiliation, then immediately switching back. Then party switching cancels out the vote of actual party members, and there is a wish to game the system and influence the outcome. And then, I don't know if I can say Republican Party, the party that enjoys 70% of the registered voters in this state, had a series of Facebook posts. And all of these were for me to make sure I understood what the underlying problem was as defined by the folks who are supporting this. There was one from January 6th. Democrats should not be voting in the GOP primary. You don't get to identify as Republican just for the primary. The legislators need to be reminded who they work for and the platform they represent, not the people, but the platform they represent. There was one on the 2018 data from Secretary of State that had incorrect on party affiliation to Republican, but not much. 6,000 Democrats, 4,500 unaffiliated. Crossover vote is not a change in party affiliation due to a change in philosophy. It is deliberately interfering in the selection of a primary candidate by temporarily changing affiliation, generally on election date. Then Dems and their funding machine are, because they know they have little chance of winning, coached to switch registration and flood the Republican ranks. And then we have people in elected offices who are not truly Republican. They're not on the policy positions of the Republican Party and do not have the fundamental beliefs of the Republican Party. And then finally, just because they wear our colors doesn't mean they play for our team. So fair enough. But I happen to be a data person. And so I always look at what actually occurs. So what I got from these is that the stated problems that this bill proposes to fix is that A, these are temporary changes in party affiliation, not permanent ones. It's the temporary ones. And that they are specifically for interference in nominations, canceling votes, gaming the systems, and influencing the outcome. And the second piece of it is that the action of changing affiliation is somehow nefarious, particularly when it's in the Dems. I don't know, other than Green Lantern, who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men, but I think that we don't know the motivation, especially once we start looking at the total numbers of individuals who change affiliation. So in one of these, it brought up the 2018 data that was provided by, and the analysis that was done by the Secretary of State, where 6,000 Democrats were identified as changing to Republican and 4,500. Now understand that they just looked at those applications for change in affiliation from July 3rd or something like that to September 2018. So it was a pretty narrow area. Now, what's really key here is of those 6,057 that were D to R, only 515 went from D to R back to D. So only 515 people in the entire state during this time period actually had that temporary switch that has been identified as the problem. That's 0.4% of the ballots, of the Republican ballots that were submitted. So the temporary changes are actually minuscule. Then I want to switch over to voter turnout as a percent of registration at the primary, because this is really critical. I could go over all, but essentially in 2018, 65% of the registered Republicans actually voted in the primary. In 2020, 69%. Now, to understand that for 2020, that was 110,575 people cast ballots, Republican ballots. And that, again, that means that 31%, or 53,420 Republicans, registered Republicans, did not vote in the primary. To compare that, to get a feel for the scale, the total number of registered Democrats was 42,587. We had more Republicans who did not show up for the primary than we had total registered Democrats. The problem is not switching over. The problem is participation. If you have a solution of a liquid in which you have a substance that you feel is ruining that liquid, that solution, you aren't able to pull that out. What you do is you dilute it so that it has no effect. And the way you dilute it is you get registered Republicans who are staying home to get out and vote. And I would say that that's the responsibility of the party. And yet in my county, and when I've checked with other counties, that's not happening. There is no action to get registered voters who do not vote in the primary to get out. The election results in 2020, again, we're going to go back to what's really driving people to change over. 47 of 75 legislative seats were determined in the primary. All but 3 of those were Republican. So 63% of the legislative seats were determined in a primary. The people of Wyoming are not stupid. Now, sometimes they don't see what's going on, but when you're looking at the prior results, and in my county, not a single Democrat filed in 2020. Why would they not go ahead and change to Republican regardless of what they say or unaffiliated or what they think? So I think that's really important for folks to understand. Over 90% of county and local partisan races are determined in the primary. So if you don't vote in the primary, and particularly you don't vote in whatever the majority party in your county is, it's already decided before you get to the general. And that's particularly a problem. Now, do I think that this switching is good? Absolutely not. Somebody coming in and changing on the day and changing back, no. But I don't believe that the data shows that that's what's happening. I think people are saying, I really care. I look around what's happening. And while I am not a dyed-in-the-wool Republican Party person, we have a lot of people who believe in the principles of the party, even if they don't care for the party itself. So in summary, changes in affiliation are overwhelmingly permanent. Overwhelmingly permanent. They change and they do not change back. The bill, as it is, will encourage exactly the action that is being stated they don't want, which is up until 12 May, through 11 May, why would anybody looking back at 2020 who is registered and not affiliated, why would they not change over? That's not what we want to encourage. That's not the stated purpose. So this bill actually encourages the exact behavior that it's trying to stop. The only effective way to ensure party purity is to remove the incentive. That is open primaries with partisan caucuses. Now, just one last thing, because the sponsor.
We
And
just
I'm
need to
done.
stay focused on the bill. So yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Okay.
So on one thing, I actually looked at this for Sheridan in 2020, again, to see how this might affect. There were 7,048 ballots, folks on the history file. Of those, in Sheridan County, of those 7,050, the total that were Dem in April of 2020, that were Republican on the primary, and then Democrat at the general, and in 2021 was 6 out of 7,048.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Any questions, committee? Senator French.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just a few questions on, wouldn't this bill protect both parties? I mean, you were talking kind of strictly Republicans, but let's have the scenario that there's wherever a couple or 2 or 3 Democrat candidates and maybe one Republican in the primary, and maybe that party wanted to do some mischief, and they had a campaign to vote for, well, of the 3 Democrats running, we want this one to make the primary to go on to the general. And they were organized, and I don't think that party would want that undue influence either, right? And a couple more questions. You said, it's overwhelmingly one party in the state, and in your area that there wasn't really an effort to get those people that weren't participating out there. Well, is that what's good for the goose is good for the gander? Was there an effort by the other party to get out the vote? Was one thing. I doubt that there was. One of our most successful governors in recent memory was Governor Dave Friedenthal. He was of the minority party in the state. Well, he was a good candidate. He ran a good race. I think people out there just got to remember, whether you're Republican or Democrat, you got to have good people running. If you're a Republican running for whatever office it is, legislature, governor, county commissioner, whatever it is, you have to have a good candidate that people put their trust in. Same with the Democrat Party. You know, if you run a good candidate, people, like the example I just said, the Democratic government for elected twice, 8 years. So anyway, that's my general comments. Thank you.
There may have been a question in there somewhere. Feel free
Yeah,
to
there's
respond
a
if you'd
question
like.
somewhere there.
Mr. Chairman, Senator French. So on the first one, on protecting the Dems, the data doesn't show that Republicans are switching to Dems. We have 2 counties that have that are heavily Democratic. Basically, in the Senate, you have 2 counties that have Democratic senators, correct? So, and in those, ironically, those also, the switches, when they occur, and they're permanent, are from Dem to Republican. They're not Republican to Dem. So one of the reasons I believe that the Democratic Party has, and I don't know if there's anybody here, I don't know, I don't know the people who are Dems. So I've not heard a single one of them say, hey, this is a problem we don't want it to do for the Dems. We want to preserve ours as well. I don't think this protects either one, frankly. So, you know, as a protective measure, I don't think that's successful. The second question that I heard was about did Dems get out the vote? And so I would say to that one, I fault both parties for not taking actions to get out the vote. However, the overwhelming numbers that don't vote in the primary in the state are Republican. So yeah, yes, I would expect the Democrats to get out the vote, but the Republicans as well. And to say, well, we're going to change registration rules and we're going to change affiliation when not one action has been done that I know of, doesn't mean it hasn't, but that I know of, to dilute any possible effect of that hasn't occurred. And then finally, I absolutely agree that good people should run. And I don't care who they are, what their background is, or how long they've been in the state. Good people who put the state and the people of the state first, those are the ones I want to see running.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. I appreciate it. Do you have any more public testimony? Feel free to, all right, come on down.
Good evening, Chairman, esteemed committee members. My name is Jen Lowe. I'm Executive Director of the Equality State Policy Center. This is my first time before this committee, and I would like to thank you for hearing this bill and for taking public testimony this evening. The Equality State Policy Center is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization whose mission is to improve the lives of all Wyoming's residents through transparent government, fair elections, and thriving communities. It is fair elections that brings me before you tonight. I'm asking that you oppose Senate File 97. My counterparts at ESPC have been testifying before the legislature for more than 25 years to perfect the voting rights of all Wyomingites, regardless of party affiliation. Our concern with this bill is that by prohibiting registered voters from unregistering themselves in the 3 months described in the proposed legislation, you are essentially removing a voter's right to exercise his or her franchise by registering in another state or back in Wyoming, or with a party that better reflects their values. That is a violation of voting rights. Take, for example, a woman who's changing her name during this window of time, or a member of the military who's deployed. They may find themselves unable to exercise their right to vote because of the bill's prohibition on unregistering in the window described in the bill. Because voters would have to select a party preference before candidates file to run for office, Senate File 97 would prevent voters from making an informed choice on a preferred candidate. It's also worth noting that when someone goes to register in Wyoming, their default association is unaffiliated. Someone may unwittingly assume that they registered to vote with one party, only to find out at the primary that they are unable to vote for their preferred candidate. And this robs Wyoming voters of the ability to make the right choice for themselves and for their families. I urge you to vote no on Senate File 97. I would also like to add that legislation is not designed to protect either party. Thank you for your time, and I stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions for Ms. Lowe? Okay, thank you very much. Any further public comment? Ma'am, you're next. You raised your hand. Come on down.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Dr. Michelle Bellini. I'm a resident of Cheyenne. I was raised in Wyoming, went to the University of Wyoming for undergrad. I'm a Wyoming voter. And in my professional life, I'm a political science professor. And so this caught my eye. I got an email. And there's some problems with the bill. It sets the registration so early that we don't even know who's running. And a lot of Wyoming voters aren't affiliated. They're technically unaffiliated, right? They gave you some numbers. And if you skip an election, you're purged from the rolls. And so I think just May, June, July, August is too long to not be able to change your affiliation. So I think there is a way to have a closed primary without still preventing this kind of switchover. And unfortunately, that's not my area of expertise. But there are closed primaries in states without having this kind of delayed sort of switching registrations. So what's happening is the voting laws are being manipulated to reduce the number of voters. Is what the effect of the bill will be to reduce the number of voters, in my opinion. So these words should sound familiar. To secure our rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, and preventing people from exercising their right to vote is taking away their consent. Thank you for your time tonight.
Okay, thank you, Doctor, for testifying. Any questions for Dr. Bellini? Senator Wasserberg.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Chairman, I would, my undergraduate degree was in political science. And so I've always found this a very fascinating issue. The issue to me, when I talk to people who admitted to being crossover voters, they would say, I crossed over because I knew Sheriff Pennell personally and I really wanted to vote for him. Or I crossed over because I wanted to vote. I knew this person in the Republican Party that I really liked and I wanted to vote for him. I knew him personally. I worked with them. And so the few times that I've talked to people who crossed over, it was because they had a personal connection to the person. So don't you agree?
Ask a question. Feel free to respond if you like.
You know, so you're saying people want to switch over for a positive reason, not a negative reason. So preventing them from switching over would prevent them from voting their free choice.
Okay, any further questions? Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have states that have a more time where it's locked up like a year. So this is only a few months. So I mean, apparently even states like New York have had systems like this in place, and it is a party nomination. It's not. It isn't necessarily just another vote. It's parties actually spend money. So I mean, if you don't like the system, don't we have to change the whole party structure, how that works? And not, I mean, if it's a Republican Party primary, isn't that what we're talking about here?
I think that people well, Can you ask the question again?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a Republican primary or a Democrat primary. It's not, it's how the party picks a nominee. So it's not necessarily the same as just another vote. It's the party nominee. That's, if you go look at the statute, that's what it says. It doesn't say a Republican / Democrat nominee. It says party nominee. So would you agree that there is mischief? I mean, I'm a guy that they spend 3 times the money to try to get me gone. And I can tell you on social media, there was a lot of activity on the Democrat side to game the system. So it can't be that it just doesn't happen. I mean, either these people were lying on social media or they were really doing it. I mean, and so don't you think that there is some of that goes on? And if it's a party nominee, then they shouldn't be doing that. I mean,
Well, I
go ahead,
think
Doc.
parties are how people participate in politics, through the party, right? And so it is how a party picks a nominee. It is a party election, but most people don't differentiate it in their minds as much as maybe you do, or people that are participating in the party on an ongoing daily basis. I guess it's just the sort of anti-democratic kind of nature of it bringing down the number of voters that I'm most concerned about.
Any further questions here, committee? Just a reminder, we do have some more public testimony, so. just-
I'll be
Senator
brief,
Bush, yeah.
Mr. Chairman. I'll push back just a little bit on that. I think there's the parties because whether it's Republican Party, Democrat Party, whatever, they have a platform, a set of standards, whatever. Let's say Republican Party, I stand for A, B, C, D. Democrats, I stand for A, B, C, D. That gives the public the opportunity to say, I agree with that party, or I agree with that party. My moral compass, my whatever, identifies me with this, and I want to know what that party stands for, or that party stands for. So I think that's very valid, that party affiliation, what they stand for. Then that gives the public the opportunity to say, you know, I agree with that party, and I'm going to vote accordingly. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Feel free to respond if you'd like.
Okay, yes, their parties do usually publish a platform, although the Republican Party did not in the last election publish a platform, not the national party anyway. So the state of Wyoming might have, but the national party did not. But most people vote for people, not the party. And I think that's what the way that Wyoming people vote for their neighbors is more for, he was my buddy with firefighters, or, you know, whatever, and vote that way. But yes, it would be better if more people read the platforms. I think I would encourage that.
Okay, well, thanks for your testimony. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time.
Any further in-person comment? Mr. Moline? It's a familiar face on the Ag Committee. Talking on an election bill. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation, sitting in support of this bill. This fits within my members' policy. As far as the education, we have a monthly newsletter that goes out to about over 10,000 of my members, and we can utilize that to help educate about the changes on this issue, just like we do a lot of other issues. And with that, Mr. Chairman, trying to be uncharacteristically brief, sitting in support of this bill, I would sit for any questions you or the committee may have.
Any questions for the Farm Bureau? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further in-person commentary before we move to online? Okay, oh, Senator Hutchings, yeah, welcome. Okay, yeah, come on down.
Chairman and members of the committee, Senator Hutchings, Senate District 5 here in Cheyenne. I was in my car and I said, I got to get back and at least let you know I am in support of this bill. And that is the gist of it. I have a Zoom meeting waiting for me at home a few miles away, several miles away, but I just wanted to stop in and just give my support.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions for our colleague?
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, travel safe. Looks like we have somebody in the back. Come on down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Marguerite Herman here for the League of Women Voters of Wyoming. Just to start out with, when discussing the runoff primary bill that and has said before is that the reason for that was how important the primary was, because in fact it turns out to be the de facto general election in the state in many races, and I think Gail Simmons presented a lot of data on that. I agree. That makes this bill all the more necessary to defeat because the primary is so important, and it is not a closed system as some kind of characterize it. It is an open election, public election, funded by the public, as opposed to the caucus system, which would be closed and completely controlled. So I want to make that distinction. It's an open, publicly conducted and publicly funded election. So it is all the more important to not narrow down the ability of people to access the ballot in a public election and a publicly funded election. The League of Women Voters supports engagement and voting for the candidate of our choice to lead for people to be able to elect someone to lead their local government, their state government. So we want people to be engaged, to find out who the candidates are, learn about them. We conduct candidate forums because we want people to make informed choices. And we think, once again, this bill operates contrary to that. We want them to have the ability to make a choice at any time in the campaign season, the election season, especially to consider all the candidates that are available who are running for office. I would suggest you could consider the benefits of broad participation in an election, the winnability of the candidate when you get to the general. If you have more participation in the primary, I think the person who is selected has more of a chance to prevail in the general election. And I agree with Senator French. We all have to run good candidates, the two parties. That obviously makes for a better election, no matter which party you're affiliated with. The League of Women Voters opposes the state telling people when and how to change their registration for no other reason than to control the outcome of that election. You control it to ensure the security and that sort of thing, but this seems to be one of those cases. The current system is working, in fact, as Gail Simmons mentioned, that some of the things that are mentioned that might be offensive, in fact, are not happening. Although it is not obviously to the liking of many party officials, but it is working to carry out the choices of voters. It's what our founding fathers called, and the professor called, consent of the governed. And the current system does allow that to take place without artificial restrictions. And also, I would also quote the professor mentioning that people in Wyoming vote for the individuals. They always have. They don't vote for the parties. And that I suggest that enables the voters to fully exercise their franchise. And I think it selects very good people. I think it has resulted in some excellent leaders of our local, state, and our national representatives. It seems to have done a good job so far. So for that, I will stand for questions if you have any.
Any questions for the League of Women Voters? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Wait, come on down. Looks like this may be the last person testifying. We'll see in person and we'll switch to, then we'll switch to online. But welcome.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm Lindy Kirkbride, and I'm from a sixth-generation working ranch family right here in Laramie County. I am coming today. I am a member of the League of Women Voters, and I have helped them many a forum, given rides to people to poll, because I'm also from that generation that is, we heard our president say, that's not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And so I always felt that it's a sacred duty to vote, and I always wish there was some kind of a rite of passage that we can say, I voted, and I think it's a really interesting time in Wyoming. The primary is the race, and it always has been, and it comes at a time in the summer that people are not really waking up to what's going on. And I always am frustrated about that. But I don't want us to be have this bill be something that is a problem, a solution looking for a problem, because I think we can do better with education, but we are going to have to do a whole heck of a lot of education for people in my generation, especially who are used to having things go the way they've been in the past. But I think that if there is an effort to change just for a certain election, this coming election, but we will have many more elections than this. And so I'm not sure that this is really the way we should approach it. Maybe we should look at the long range kind of effect of what we're doing and really consider that it may, there weren't many years ago that this was a bellwether state. And so I'm not sure that this is the way to approach is to take, for many years, I coordinated with the Department of Ed as a citizen, non-paid, coordinated the Wyoming Student Parent Mock Election. And it was a blast. It was really fun working with kids and parents and getting them excited about voting. And they held their own elections in their schools. But I want people to be more excited about voting and not have roadblocks there that are going to be there permanently. And so I appreciate your taking this bill in the Ag Committee, and I stand for any questions.
Hey, thank you. Any questions? Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we ran, you ran against me. It was at a party event that I said that I looked at your voter registration and you were a Democrat. And as I looked back, I even said publicly that you voted for Obama. And you said that it was a free country. And I suggested that this is back then, this is a party nomination. And so I kind of look at this and say, isn't that kind of what this is about here? We're trying to stop the crossing over to try to cause mischief in a race. So and I don't know if you have an answer to that, or maybe want to discuss that. But obviously you were a Democrat and you registered as a Republican in a three-way race. And
Okay, and so there's no, I don't hear a question, but so feel free to respond, Ms. Kirkbride. But once again, I want to remind the committee of the time, and we do have other people testifying, but if you have a
Thank you,
response.
Mr. Chairman. I realize that. Mr. Bouchard, I have been both parties. I'm proud of my record. I've never missed an election. I've never missed encouraging people to vote and encouraging people to be educated about the people that are candidates. I realized I could have been either one because I've been either one. I was an elected conservation district commissioner as a Republican, and I've been a Republican more years than I've been a Democrat. And so I feel like, as other people have testified here, we have all shades of Democrats and Republicans. I think this bill is designed to limit the shades and to have it be, instead of a big spectrum of people that have other issues. I am interested in water, and I'm interested in ag because I live out there. I'm interested in people participating in their government because that's the right thing to do. And so, yes, I can be either one. I am not a, quote, dyed-in-the-wool party person like you are. I am a person that is very proud of to be a Republican now, but to also say that there are other issues. I'm an issue person too.
Okay, thank you.
sir.
Any further questions? Thank you for your testimony. Any further in-person testimony? Okay, well, we'll switch online. Looks like we have Gary Coles. Let me know if I mispronounced your name. Welcome to that.
You said it correctly. My name is Gary Coles from Uintah County. Now, I'm kind of shocked to see this bill in the Senate Agriculture Committee. Now, I'm not sixth generation, but fourth generation from ranching. And I hope some of our cows and horses realize how important it is to their vote. And I just don't see the connection for this in the committee, because this was in a committee with 2 sponsors and 3 non-sponsors, and suddenly it's in a committee with 3 sponsors and 2 non-sponsors. So I hope I'm not whistling in the Wyoming wind, but I want to tell you my feelings. Now, this is really important to me. I am supposed to be in a Zoom call with a banker in Hong Kong. I canceled that to be here because I have done everything I can. My family and I have tried to contribute to this state. We've owned ranches, businesses. We've served on boards and committees. I was the president of the Associated Students of the University of Wyoming. I was on the board of trustees at the university as an ex officio. I've served on the local planning committee. I care about Wyoming. Now, I have always felt Wyoming was a leader. We led in voting rights. The territorial legislature in Wyoming granted voting rights to women before everybody. I don't want to compare us with New York with their antiquated voting system. I care about Wyoming and doing the right things. And to me, I've done everything I can, hoping to encourage people. I've gone out, I've tried to get people to register. At the height of Vietnam, 1968, when everybody ran to Canada, I joined the US Army and became a Green Beret. I care about my country. I care about the right to vote. Anything that restricts that right in the least hurts me. I really, really think this is a step in the wrong direction. Now, I want to give you another example about me. Right now, I'm traveling. I'm an absentee voter. Now, from what I understand in this bill, I would have to make any change or do what I want by the 24th of May. That's really, really early to think about voting. As an absentee, I usually don't think about it quite that quick. Now, I vote for the people I care about. A couple of times I've almost switched to the Democratic Party. I hate to admit, I've got a couple of friends who are in that party. And they were running for county commission and sheriff. And if there'd been another person, I would have switched to get the right person. I care about the person. I care about the state. Anyway, fortunately, I didn't have to switch. Now, in the last election, July 16th, 2020, I got this message when I requested my absentee ballot for the primary and the general election. This is from the county clerk. I don't show you as a registered voter at this time, so I cannot send you a ballot. Would you like me to send you information on how to register by mail? Well, if you haven't looked at the rules for registering to vote by mail, the first thing it says, provide your information, home residence, address in Uinta County, read the registration oath, sign your legal name. The signature must be notarized. How do I get a notary if I'm in Mexico or in Peru? I can't. Anyway, we found ways. I managed to finally get things done, and I managed to vote. I am totally opposed to this bill or any other bill that's going to restrict, because they're just complicating things. You're throwing that $12,000 away because you're trying to bow down to one person who ran and lost an election. I ran for state senate against an unbeatable incumbent. I lost by less than 50 votes. Did I cry about it? Did I whine? Did I try to do lawsuits? No. I stood up and I said, hey, we have a great election system in Wyoming. Let's defend it. And so I certainly hope that you will stand up. I know a lot of you are sponsors. I hope that doesn't mean, usually when we sponsor things, we'll join in to help somebody and make it look a little better. I hope that's the case. I hope you'll look at this objectively and defeat it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Coles. Any questions? Okay, thank you, sir, for your time.
Okay.
Okay, next up, we have Patty Krakow. And I have to say, we're coming up on an hour's worth of public testimony. So if we could please, hate to give the folks at the end the short end of the stick, but maybe if Ms. Krakow could come in and, if you heard something that's been said before, feel free to just say, I agree with a previous statement, and you don't need to elaborate. So Ms. Krakow.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see Ms. Krakow online, but I do have Mark Moody.
Okay, Mark Moody, you're up. Welcome to Senate Agriculture. Please proceed with your testimony. I believe you're the last public comment, so no pressure. But
okay. All right. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Mark Moody. I am a citizen here in Cheyenne. I will make it brief. I support this bill 100%. It is a great bill. It will actually, as Senator Bouchard say, make sure that it's fairly and that people aren't registering from other parties to try to keep somebody out that stands for our party platform. I just wanted to say, probably one of the few times I'll say that New York does it right. New York laws and their primary is in July 8th. They actually have to do it by February 14th, and it already passed. So New York's already done that. And a lot of states have closed primaries. So I don't see why this is a bad bill. I think it's a great bill. It keeps, both the Democrats and Republicans, separated. And again, too, everybody can then, if they want to change it, they'll have that option. So that's all I have, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Moody. I appreciate your brevity. Any questions, committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, public comment is closed. I'll go ahead and consider the bill. Do I hear a motion? Moved by Senator French, second by Bouchard. Committee. So we heard one suggestion for an amendment on page 2. No, excuse me, page 3. I wrote page 3, line 2. Do we want to take up the clerks on their suggested amendment there, the technical correction?
I would move that amendment, but I'm not sure exactly where it goes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that was my phone somehow. Oh, anyways, so I believe the suggestion was on page 3, line 2, strike out not later than an insert prior to. Okay, and okay, so I'll entertain such motion from Senator Wasberger.
I was gonna say, I believe that's correct, because the way it reads now, it'd be the first day that people could file instead of prior to the first day, is the way I read it.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, yeah. Senator Bidman, does that sound okay? Okay. Right. Okay, all right. So any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor say aye. Oh, sorry, Senator Bouchard, go ahead.
Not to split a day, but if you go prior to the first day, the way it's written now, it includes the first day. I don't know, I mean, can we ask the clerks, does that matter? I don't know.
I'm assuming it matters because they went through the effort of pointing that out to us, and that, so right, yeah, pretty, okay. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. We're back on the bill. Any further discussion, committee? Okay, we'll go do a roll call.
Senator Bouchard.
Aye.
Senator French. Senator Cost.
For now, aye.
Senator Wasserberger.
Aye.
Chairman Boner.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 5 ayes, do pass amended.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony, folks, and look forward to continuing discussion.